Hello, welcome back everyone. So today's video is part of the material I plan on presenting for my mental health and wellness session. So by the time this is posted, I'll have already had my live session at school on May 9th. But my session is all about cell phones, the use of cell phones, mental health, mental well-being, and technology in general. So cell phones, good, bad, or whatever. And a lot of this is just, a discussion on the healthy use of technology. So, first thing to consider is, why do you use your cell phone? Um, if you're like any of the rest of us, you probably use your cell phone mostly for the various apps that you can access from it. Like I know for myself, currently, I'm taking a break from Instagram just because I was not enjoying the way I was using and interacting with the application. How much time I was using, the type of content that I was seeing, and the fact that I was just scrolling endlessly. Like I wasn't really enjoying that, and so for me, that led me to just deactivating my account, and so I have no access to it. And this is something that I've been practicing for some time, right? Since pretty much since I was in grade 11, I've been taking sporadic breaks of being on and off social media, which would mean that's like 10, 11 years now, something like 11, maybe almost 12 years now of taking breaks from social media. So, you're probably using social media, you're probably using various messaging services. So that could be Snapchat, that could be your actual messaging, and whatever else kids are using these days to send messages back and forth to communicate and text with one another, pretty much. Maybe you're also using your cell phone to actually call people every now and then, right? What a shocker that would be. Um, but reflecting on why do you use your cell phone, right? And for many people it's for entertainment or for communication. Very few of us really use our cell phones as a device to help us with learning. You always hear kids say, oh, why do I have to do this in math? I have a calculator in my cell phone. Great. Do you know how to use the calculator in your cell phone? Do you understand how to do the math? I mean, just pushing back on some of that, like, well, I don't need to do any learning because my cell phone will do it for me. And that might be the wrong way to approach kind of technology, right? You still want to have that kind of capacity for creative thinking, critical thinking up in your brain, and to be able to use these technological tools as tools, right? I think for many of us, it's not that we're using our cell phone, it's that our cell phone is using us, right? Particularly if you look at your screen time, you might find that you're on your device for, 6, 10, 12 hours a day, right? I mean, think about that. 12 hours of screen time a day. It's not far-fetched. 4 hours is probably around the norm. I think Jonathan Haidt has done quite a bit of work on this and looked at the numbers, and there's quite a bit of data out there. But I think 3, 4 hours is what these studies kind of conclude that that's typically how much time people are spending on their phones. And what are they doing? Well, for many people, like I said, entertainment, or communication, right? And the communication, keep in mind, I'm not referring to like being on the phone talking to someone or FaceTiming someone. Maybe they live far away. I mean, like communication, like you're Snapchatting people, which at this point, might also be considered entertainment. So, really think to yourself, why do I use my cell phone? And if I didn't have my cell phone, like what would I do if I didn't have my cell phone? If I didn't have Instagram, what would I do? Right? And maybe that comes with the discussion of what they call FOMO. This is something we were discussing in a staff kind of meeting here at CTK. But I know that when I was in grade 11, I had a lot of resistance to taking a break from social media because I was worried. I said, well, what about all the friends I make? I can't. Back then, we really only had Facebook and some other things, but Facebook was the most popular one at the time. And I thought, what about all the friends I make? Like, I got to be able to add them. And then I rationalized. I said, well, you're going to be at the same school in grade 12, and many of them likely will as well. So what? Just add them later. What's the big deal, right? And I mean, I took the break from social media because I was, challenged, or, a friend of mine kind of bet me, but it was more of a challenge that, like, hey, Najib, you should see if you can even take a break, take a 1 week break. But if you can, try doing it for the whole year, see if you can get by without it. So asking yourself, why do you use your cell phone? Why do you use your device? Okay. And then that leads into some other questions here. Have you ever found yourself unable to stop scrolling? If you're like most people, you might find yourself scrolling when you don't want to. I think a very common occurrence is you go to your phone, you plan on checking the time, you have really high hopes of figuring out what time it is, and maybe you need to go do something, and then all of a sudden, you're scrolling. Wait a minute, how did I get it on Instagram? What am I doing on TikTok? What time is it? I was supposed to check the time, or whatever app you're trying to look at. Have you ever found yourself unable to stop scrolling? You gotta start to reflect and understand, well, why is that? Like, what's going on? What is leading me to scrolling for 6 or 7 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours? Essentially, what is leading you to use your device longer than you would like? Okay, because I think that that's a real issue for many young people. I think that that's an issue really for anyone with a cell phone, right? Not to be critical of just young people, but obviously this presentation is aimed towards educating younger people. So, looking at your own behavior and catching yourself and bringing more awareness to those times where you really didn't want to be on a device, you didn't want to be on an app, and yet somehow, one way or another, you're in this, like, I don't know, shrimp position or whatever they call this position where you're, curled up, head down, and you're just swiping, looking, or maybe you get a phone sideways and you're playing a game, right? Because it's not just criticism of our use of social media and communication technology, right? A lot of people use their cell phone, a lot of people use their devices for video games, right? And so this is really a discussion on technology, not just cell phones, but because you can end up playing Fortnite for 6 or 7 hours and maybe eating the crumbs out of your belly button because you can't be bothered to get up and not, you know, eat at the dinner table or eat somewhere else or put the game down, put the device down for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes and just give your food the attention it deserves. And, I'm pretty guilty of this too. I certainly love throwing on some Netflix or a YouTube video while I eat, right? But there are many times where I've built into my day, where I try to build in this awareness of, am I just aimlessly scrolling? Okay. So bring more awareness to that. Catch yourself more often if you can. Have you noticed yourself reaching for your phone more frequently when you are experiencing an unpleasant emotion? So, one of the reasons why people might use their phone, play video games to an extent that is harmful to them. And what do I mean by harmful? Perhaps you're neglecting things that you need to be doing, right? Maybe chores or homework or studying or practicing, or your actual friendships, right? In real life. You might find yourself using your technology, your cell phone, to the point where it's harmful to you. Because some of what I've recently learned, what's going on is that when we're on social media, when we're on video games, when we're on other things that we're accessing on the internet, they have this capacity to help us suppress negative emotions, suppress pain, right? So they're lowering your experience of pain. And to some extent, it's externalizing our focus, right? So think of, here's me, here's my device. When I'm focused on my device, I have less awareness of what's going on inside, what's happening with me. And I'm focused on this thing here, right? And when we're using TikTok, when we're using, Instagram, when we're using Snapchat or Fortnite or Call of Duty or whatever it is, our focus becomes very honed in on this thing that's outside of us. And it helps us to not experience those negative, unpleasant emotions as much. It reduces the intensity of the feeling. And maybe it entirely reduces the feeling at all, right? But the thing is, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, so maybe you were supposed to study for a test, maybe you're supposed to go to a practice or hang out with friends or whatever it was in the real world, right? The tangible world. Although you've suppressed those negative emotions for a short amount of time, well, maybe 10, 12, 14 hours, whatever your session length is, you haven't really done anything to solve the problem that you initially had. And so you will run into this kind of negative cycle, this feedback loop where you experience an unpleasant emotion. You have to do something that maybe you don't really want to do. Maybe you don't know how to do it. And maybe you don't see the value in it. But, to some extent, it's required. The necessity for that causes an unpleasant emotion, which leads us to wanting to emotionally regulate. And how have most of us been trained to emotionally regulate? By outsourcing our awareness, by bringing our awareness to something external, outside of us, instead of paying attention to, ooh, I don't feel so good. I don't like this feeling of stress, anxiety, fear, right? Whatever it is, anger, sadness. How do I get rid of this emotion? Or not even get rid, right? How do I not feel this emotion? Because you ideally you want to work on whatever the issue is to make some progress, because that's the best, healthiest way to get rid of the emotion. Not that emotions are something to get rid of, but if you're feeling anxious and stressed about a test, you have many options. One of them is to completely ignore what you're supposed to do, play the video game, go on Snapchat, go on TikTok, whatever, scroll. Take your focus away from yourself onto something else and not feel that emotion until you get to a point where, okay, well, now I'm, maybe it's test day. Okay, I didn't study, but I didn't feel bad about it. But the thing is, you build this negative loop where, maybe you don't do as well as you hoped. Maybe you fail this assessment. Maybe you don't get the assignment handed in, and things start building up and it creates more negative emotion. And what do you do to deal with your negative emotion? What have you been training yourself to do? To externalize with some sort of, thing. And this presentation is focusing on technology and cell phones, but people can externalize their emotions with using food, right? With all sorts of things, right? Things that we don't necessarily discuss in this presentation, but pay attention to when you want to reach for your phone. And for many students, it's the second the teacher is done teaching, the second they're done filling in their note, the second that there's like a quiet space in a conversation. Anytime there's this like degree, whether it's a small degree or a big degree of negative emotion experienced, that is when often we reach for that device to be able to ignore that feeling of discomfort. Have you found yourself unable to put your phone down during bedtime? Have you noticed that when you do put away your phone, your mind can't shut off? So, how did these two tie in together? Well, because you're creating this negative feedback loop, what is also happening is that you're stimulating your brain. You're basically passing so much information through your brain that you don't even get time to think about your day, how certain things went. So let's say you're standing with your friends and you're saying something, and for whatever reason, your friends ignore you, whatever. In the middle of your story, and this happens, right? In the middle, you're telling a story, and in the middle, you realize like, oh, no one's listening. It's not a fun feeling. It's an uncomfortable feeling. What do you do in that moment? Well, some people, and often nowadays, you'll see people will reach for a device. Okay, that didn't feel good. Let me not think about it. Let me not embrace this emotion, this experience. Let me ignore it. Let me just scroll. Okay, I'll do something on my phone. I'll pretend like there's something going on there. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. So these things tie together because either you're not letting yourself experience that emotion, or you're bombarding your brain with so much stimulus that your brain doesn't even get time to process these things, right? Whatever injury, insult, slight you felt happened to you mentally and emotionally, we're able to just externalize our focus onto other things and not have to think about them. And so some of you might find that, like, okay, it's time to go to bed. Maybe mom or dad took the phone away. It's like 11 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 a.m. It's pretty late. I got to get up for school at 6, 7, 8, 5, right? But my brain won't shut off. Like I can't stop out. You have rapid thoughts. And maybe a lot of them are uncomfortable thoughts. You look, oh man, no one laughed at that joke I said. Oh, they stopped listening when I was telling that story. Oh, this person said something weird to me. I don't know how to feel about that. All these different thoughts start coming to your head, and it's uncomfortable. And so what do people do? They'll reach for a device. And I've been there. I've certainly been there. And I'm not too happy about it, right? And I don't like it, but I've certainly been in scenarios in my life where, I needed Netflix playing something. I needed something playing in the background as I was falling asleep. I didn't want to, be alone or be with my thoughts. And yeah, it creates this negative cycle. You start getting poor outcomes, like poor sleep. Okay, you go to sleep. What I would find is I'd fall asleep. I'd finally exhausted, can't think anymore. Body shuts down, you fall asleep. But because that audio is still playing, maybe some loud sequence comes on, or there's and wakes me up, or the light from the screen wakes me up, or I whack my laptop and it falls and gets knocked over and it wakes me up. Now my sleep's getting disrupted. Or, with cell phones, it's even more difficult, right? If there's bright lights bombarding you, and you kind of have to physically manually hold the thing and continue to use it more and more, where now you're getting to this weird feedback loop of your body's dead tired, you want to go to sleep, but you just, oh, what's the next video? What's after this? What's after that? And one of the remedies to this is to give yourself some time before bed. 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, where you're not on a device, where you're not externalizing your focus. Maybe you're focused on yourself. You might need time to journal. You might need time to meditate. You might need time to do some exercise, right? Exercise is a great way to kind of physically alleviate those experiences of anxiety and tension and stress, right? Go for a walk, go for a run. Maybe lift some weights, right? Do some sports, do some activity, do something physical, right? Your body needs this physical expression as well. And so these things tie together because when we seek to avoid these negative emotions, when we seek to avoid this uncomfortable feeling, and we distract ourselves with this external stimulus, it starts to create this negative loop, and it starts to create these negative outcomes in all areas of our life, right? It affects your ability to just sit quietly with yourself. It affects your ability to focus. It affects your ability to stay on task. It affects your ability to fall asleep. It affects the quality of your sleep because we're not allowing our brain to process those negative emotions, right? We're not bringing our awareness onto ourself, onto whatever's going on with us. And so, it's really important with the cell phones to have this knowledge, have this awareness of how do our cell phones impact us? How does having our focus on something outside of us all the time, or for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, what does it do to our mental state? What does it do to our emotional state? How do you resolve that? How do you get to a place where you're using this technology in a helpful manner? And so the point of this presentation, the point of this this discussion is to bring awareness, right? Awareness is key. Bring awareness to your emotional state during these 3 phases. Before you reach for your device, while you are using the device, particularly as your consumption goes on, and 3, after you put the device away. How do you feel? What happens immediately the second you put your phone down? turn off the game, whatever it is. What is going on inside of you? And understand that none of those emotions are bad, none of them are wrong, they're all valid. But if you don't process and work through them, they just sit there. And when they sit there, they start to fester. And when they fester, it starts to create negative outcomes and realities in our lives. It impacts our health, it impacts our well being, it impacts our mental state, it impacts our sleep. And all of these things can start negatively winding us downhill, taking us down a path that we don't want to go down. And so this presentation is all about bringing this awareness, bringing this bringing this discussion to you, right? Especially if you're young, right? You don't really know what to do with a phone. Your parents probably didn't tell you. They probably tell you to get off your phone, and you've probably noticed that they'll say that to you from the comfort of scrolling on their own phone, right? And so you kind of see this weird scenario where it's like mom and dad aren't very aware of their own cell phone use, but they don't want me using mine. That's hypocritical. And so one of the only ways to really effectively deal with this is to bring that awareness to the act itself, and to bring that awareness onto yourself, and to find alternative kind of healthier means to deal with those negative emotions, to deal with those discomforts, to accept those feelings and emotions, to embrace them, and then recognize that you have to work on these things that bother you. You have to work, like maybe you experience negative emotion because no one listens to you. Hey, maybe you need to work on finding new friends. You experience negative emotions that make you want to scroll or play video games because you don't understand what's going on in school. Hey, maybe you need to put away the device and actually pay attention and ask a question. Be okay with, looking stupid. If you don't understand, you got to ask questions, right? So when our focus is externalized, we become unaware of our internal state. And hopefully by now that I've kind of thoroughly explained why that's a problem. When you have no awareness of your internal state, you are controlled by more primitive things within our biology, right? The emotions that run underneath the surface, this kind of deep-rooted circuitry in our brains and our bodies that will push and pull us in directions to avoid pain, avoid discomfort, avoid these negative feelings. And that's why we got to bring awareness to the inside to understand, like, oh, the reason why I'm reaching for a tub of ice cream is because of this. The reason why I'm unable to, get off of TikTok, I can't stop scrolling, is because of that. And then, reaching out maybe to an adult, maybe to a friend, maybe to someone who's a little bit more experienced and asking, like, okay, what are the steps I need to take to get better at this thing that is causing all this discomfort that makes me go to this device, makes me go to this piece of technology, makes me escape from what I'm feeling. So to wrap this up, the goal is to bring awareness to ourselves. This can help lead us to the outcome of better technology use, and we aim for a healthy relationship with our device, a relationship where we can have some degree of control over how and when we use our devices, and ensuring our device doesn't negatively impact our lives, but instead contributes to our lives, right? It's not about not having TikTok, Instagram, not having a device, not playing video games, but it's about making sure that you're still, leveling up, as you might want to refer to it, in real life and not just the video game. Making sure you understand why you're doing certain things in the technological world that don't really add up in the physical world, right? Making sure you understand why you're doing what you're doing, and to have a better relationship with yourself, with the tools that are around you, and with technology, and hopefully experiencing healthier outcomes. A really good resource to give you more information on this, a lot of the inspiration behind this this presentation, Healthy Gamer GG. I'll make sure to add that into the description of this video. But check out his YouTube channel. He talks a lot about very practical techniques to deal with cell phones, technology use. I mean, the gentleman's a psychiatrist as well, so he talks about a lot of things that deal with mental health and wellness. Jonathan Haidt is another example of someone who's studied and written quite a bit on the impact of social media and cell phone use for young people. And so I'll make sure to link kind of their work in the description, but hopefully this helped. If you enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Take care, and here's to using our devices better.